Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live with Normal. I'm JM Padini, the Development Director for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's Friday, August 23rd, 2024. You know what that means, friends? It's time for me to answer all of your burning questions live. Hey, thanks for joining us. Take a quick second to hit that like, follow, or subscribe button wherever you're watching so you never miss when Normal goes live. We're about to get into the latest cannabis law, policy, and science news for this past week. And if you've got questions, I can't wait to try to answer them. Do me a favor, drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from, and also your burning questions. Hey, everyone on Instagram who just joined us. Hey, Lloyd. Afternoon to you. Hey, Scott. Hey, Samuel in North Carolina. Hey, Thomas. Happy birthday. Hey, Indiana NORML. Thanks for all you do. You get so many questions about Indiana. Like, inevitably, someone asked about Indiana at least once during this live. So, super psyched that you're here. Thomas in Texas. Hey, Lloyd in Pennsylvania. Scott in Northern Virginia. Hey, Debs. Hey, Debs, watching on Instagram. Sorry, I can't show your comment on Instagram. It doesn't connect with StreamYard properly, but I can answer your question. So Deb on Instagram is asking, is in Virginia, and is asking when do I think that adult use sales will begin in Virginia. So it was going to take a bill succeeding and being signed by the governor in order for that to happen. Now, we did put a bill on the governor's desk this year, even though it wasn't a good bill, it was still a bill. And the administration wanted to make some significant amendments to it. However, their call was not returned. There was no willingness to make these amendments, apparently, by the bill patrons, so it went nowhere. And instead, the governor just vetoed the bill. That's what you can expect next year, because we have in Virginia Democrats who don't want to put a realistic bill forward, and we have a Republican administration that's just adamantly opposed to doing anything significant with cannabis policy. So first, Deb, vote. That's going to be the priority now. It's not this November that we'll be voting for the new governor, but it is the next election in 2025. So really, that doesn't mean we won't try again with legislation in the 2025 General Assembly, but it's not likely that those Democrats will have gained any significant policy expertise, and it's not likely that those Republicans the governor will have gained any significant policy expertise, and so we'll just have more nonsense in 2025 is my projection. So if Virginians elect a governor that will sign a bill, then 2026 is the first opportunity that we'll get to do that. Now, could sales begin in 2026? Absolutely. They could begin at existing operators. The same way literally every state except for Virginia and New York has done in expanding from medical to adult use. So we could begin sales in 2026. Got a little bit of work to do before that happens, though. So get on it, Virginia. Hey, Logan in Tennessee, thanks for joining us. Juan, also on Instagram, happy Friday to you. I don't know what that means. Does that mean Austin? Tell me. Hey, Jonathan in New Jersey. Hey, Troy in Wisconsin. Okay, Logan asks, do I think Tennessee will ever legalize, at least medically? So do I think medical cannabis can pass in Tennessee? Absolutely. And I will say what I say all the time when I talk about this. So Tennessee is going to have to do so through the legislative process as opposed to through a ballot initiative or voter referendum. And there's a more conservative legislature in Tennessee. So it's okay, Tennessee, to pass a small, narrow bill. It's okay not to get everything you want all at once. And that's an approach that if you're in a state that is really opposed as a legislature, not the voters, because the voters aren't opposed to this, but if you have a legislature that is opposed to moving forward with meaningful cannabis policy reform, then tailor it to what they're willing to do. Look, people are going to be big bad about that. They're going to whine and cry and keyboard warrior, say mean things about how this bill isn't good enough, and that's okay. Because as long as you take one step forward, you can keep taking more. You don't have to stop. And that's exactly what happened in Virginia. Virginia went very quickly from 2015, nothing, to an affirmative defense. Fast forward to 2021, and adult use was legal. So you can gain a lot of ground in a short amount of time if you're willing to tailor your objectives to your legislature instead of fighting them on the issue. So yes, I do think you can do that in Tennessee, and I think obviously some sort of medical access is probably first up in that state. Native cultivation in Michigan. Yes, we can talk about Schedule 3. Thank you, Juan, for clarifying, Austin. And I see a question about Kansas on Instagram as well. You guys have so many questions this week, and I love it. I'm here for all of it. Okay. Schedule 3. So here's what's happened with Schedule 3. The DEA accepted public comments. The public comment period closed. Like 43,000 public comments were submitted. And now we're just waiting. We are aware that there have been requests for administrative hearings. Will they be granted? You know, my best guess is yes, that it's reasonable to assume that these hearings may be granted. But there's also what happens next, right? Because we have the presidential election in November, and the outcome of that election will absolutely influence the trajectory of this rescheduling process. Could a Republican administration shut it down altogether or slow it down enough that nothing happens? Sure. So we'll see. But you know, make good choices when you go to vote in November. We got you. We can hook you up with that. Hey, if you want to know where the candidates stand on cannabis policy, good news. We have those answers. You can check out NORML's Smoke the Vote. It's a voter guide. It's at vote.norml.org. Vote.norml.org. Make sure you know before you vote for somebody. Let me see if I can catch up with some of these. Indiana NORML, yes, thank you for sharing this to your page. I hope all of your members that are watching jump into our live so we can see it. Ellie, you're so kind. Thank you for joining us, friend. Steve asking, when will they put cannabis to Schedule 3? We don't know. Steve, this is not the first scheduling review that we've been through here at NORML. In fact, the very first scheduling review was initiated by NORML, and so we know this can be a very slow process. It can be a multi-year process. Hey, Woodyard, welcome back. Lloyd, I know that we have some really great advocates organizing for NORML in Pennsylvania. That's what I can tell you. Hey, JT. How many states are legal? We still do have that map, JT. 24 states have legalized cannabis for adult use. That's 24 states. That's not states and territories. But you can still find that map. It's on our website. was going to tell you where, but I think it's under state laws. Yeah. Yes. NORML.org/laws, JT, is where you can see that. And you can still hover over those states. It's a little different now. You click on, you don't get the icons till you go to the state. You can also, on that same laws page, you can click on state legalization laws, and you can see a list of states and territories where adult use is legal. You got Alaska, Arizona, California, CNMI, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, DC, Guam, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Rhode Island, Virgin Islands, Vermont, Virginia, Washington. Yeah. No. Hey, Jessica in Virginia. I don't know what that means. Nick, yeah, Nick says a couple more weeks till Pennsylvania's session starts. Looking forward to them getting back to work on that issue. There is an action alert on NORML's Take Action Center, NORML.org/act for Pennsylvania. Let me see if I can catch up with these questions here. KT on Instagram is asking about any hope for Kansas. I mean, the same thing I said to Tennessee, you know, like elections have consequences. And if your state continues to elect people who are terrible on cannabis policy, you can expect to get terrible cannabis policy. It's far more effective in a state where you have to do the work through the legislature as opposed to, you know, putting it on the ballot. If you have to do it through the legislature, you really, it's a lot easier to give them what they're emotionally comfortable with. If they're not going to pass your bill, then like, if it's DOA, then that's a lot of work for nothing. You might not like the people that are in charge, and that's okay. You don't have to like them to work with them. But yeah, Kansas has like some like CBD allowance, which is nothing special given that CBD is not prohibited in any state without THC. So yeah, you know, Kansas, the same thing I said to Tennessee. You can do something, but you're going to have to tailor it to your legislature. Find some people in your legislature that are in the majority, who are on the right committees, who are well respected, who are willing to carry some bill that does something for some people, whether it provides an affirmative defense for possession, or you know, it allows possession, but maybe doesn't initially start with retail. Start somewhere. It's okay to not be perfect on day one. You bought some fine art last week, Samuel. Great. Hey, Wade, happy Friday. Hey, Jessica. Jessica asks, do I think Virginia will fall behind other states as far as legalities? I mean, yes, Jessica, Virginia already has fallen behind all of the states that have legalized now, including New York. We are far behind all of them. And then if you want to include not states like DC, we're behind DC, which also doesn't permit retail sales, but has an even easier access point in some regards to their medical program than Virginia does. we've already fallen behind. That's happened. Sorry, I have a lot of questions to read. Native cultivation in Michigan is asking, I think your question is about Schedule 3 still, is that correct? Your question is, will small growers still be able to operate? And Native, tell me, is that in relation to if Schedule 3 happened? Because if that is the question, yes, it would have zero impact on regulated cannabis, realistically. Maybe these businesses will be able to take standard tax deductions. It's not going to have any impact on consumers. And it wouldn't have any impact on state cannabis programs. They're all of our state level cannabis programs are in conflict with federal law under Schedule 1, and they would remain so under Schedule 3. So I hope that's the answer here. I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. It doesn't need to be scheduled. To your second question. Hi from France. Hello to you in France. Okay. Hey, MK in Charlottesville, Virginia, asking about the licensing process. Yes, there was a comment from the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority this week that says they are having some review of applications. Essentially, a large number of submissions are from the same applicant group, but with different business names. And so my thought process, and this is just mine alone, is that CCA is like, well, that's not really, even though Virginia law doesn't preclude that specifically, it wasn't really the intent to allow a bunch of submissions from the same group, just under different names. So I think they're trying to work through the legal ramifications of either saying, okay, we'll accept all of these, or no, we won't accept these. I guess. I thought about being diplomatic, and then I was like, nah, screw it. How many states have legalization on the ballot, asks Mark. Mark. Fortunately, Mark, I can visit NORML's Election Central and answer that question. Right now, there are 3 state-level ballot initiatives. Florida has a constitutional amendment, Amendment 3. It will require 60% of the vote since it's a constitutional amendment, and that will be on the ballot in November, and it will legalize adult use retail at existing operators. It also does allow the legislature to legislate new adult use licenses, doesn't require it. Florida trying to thread the needle there on getting language that can be approved for the ballot. That's been the rub for a number of years in Florida, where they've been like, well, no, this is violating the single issue requirements for this language, and they think they did, they got it approved. And so it doesn't do a whole lot, but it would significantly end arrests in Florida, and so that's important. North Dakota has adult use on the ballot again. And that would be possession, personal cultivation, and retail sale. And then South Dakota has a ballot initiative for adult use as well, but it does not include retail. It just does personal possession of up to 2 ounces and 16 grams, 2 ounces flour, 16 grams concentrate, personal cultivation of up to 6 plants. Does not have retail. Then there's some local measures in Texas for depenalization, and I believe we're still waiting to hear about Nebraska and Arkansas. John says nobody talked about marijuana at the DNC. Watch the whole convention. I didn't watch the whole convention, John, so I'll take your word for that. That's, look, we're all here because we all care deeply about this issue. That doesn't make it, a top ticket item for politicians or necessarily voters, even though it is remarkably popular when it is on the ballot. So I believe you when you say that. I see that question. I'm going to put a pin in it. Hey, Tree. Look, Christopher, no jinxing, first of all. Second, I hope so. Hi, Sue. God, that's great. Christopher will always be first in the South in Virginia. Hey, Mike in Anaheim. Hey, Johnny in Cincinnati. Hey, Skyline. Skyline says, did I miss where THCA is different than THC and legal to sell? Keep seeing and hearing this the past couple months, always some rolling tray law degree. So yeah, no, it's not. That if you see something called THCA flower, that's weed. It's just weed. It's just weed. Okay, that's a lot. Okay. I haven't. Look, Mams asked if the Harris campaign was coming up with a position on federal legalization. I haven't read a campaign position. I haven't gone looking for a campaign position either. However, I can tell you that Vice President Harris has called for marijuana legalization repeatedly. You can read those comments on our voter guide, vote.normal.org. We're still waiting to hear if former President Trump is going to tell people how he intends to vote on Amendment 3 in Florida. The last we heard from him was that it would be, his comment would be soon, which really sounded more like a call for dollars as to swing his vote, but whatever. How do we make it a top ticket item? Talk about it. You gotta talk about it. You have to talk about it if you're elected. Nan on Instagram, I try to do live with NORML every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes we add in a special one, like an election focused one or something. And those are here and there, but this is a weekly show, Fridays at 4. Rob on Instagram, no Virginia news yet. I mentioned a little bit earlier that the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority is sorting through some legal questions when it comes to reviewing applications for HSA 1. Hey, Randy. Pennsylvania is the France of the US. Nick, that's hilarious. Thank you, Sue. Sue says John is correct that it did not come up, even in that the DNC did not talk about weed policy. Not surprised. Oh, yeah, we're going to use the word marijuana here because it's in our name and it's what Americans say. It doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as you're working to change the laws. Not that pedantic here. Now, if you're talking about where the comma goes in code, I'm going to be pedantic. Oh, Christopher, your comments are killing me. I agree, Ryan. It would be helpful if every campaign had a cannabis statement. It's 2024. Like, can we just say where we are on weed on the campaign page somewhere? But the fact that it's not there tells you what a priority it isn't, not just for candidates, but for the general public. You know, we have to go hunt down. Oftentimes, we're out there scouring the internet trying to find comments that people have made about cannabis policy and their position because it's not on their campaign website. But fortunately, with VP Harris, it's very easy to find her comments that she has made on the record about her positions, about marijuana legalization, and we have those for you and Smoke the Vote. Christopher, I am just dying, and I'm going to put it up there and just keep scrolling and not say that out loud. Samuel, here's the thing. Samuel says, I've had THCA flower and I wasn't impressed. Maybe it's all in my head, but it's not high percent THC like on West Coast. Here's the thing about THCA flower, right? It's unregulated. What's in it? Who knows? What's in it? What's on it? Who knows? It's not regulated. So yeah, I'm glad you didn't get sick from it. I'm glad that the worst thing that happened was that it sucked. I can't even with the people look. So I'm not going to read that. Get over yourself. THC. Insulin is funny. Insulin says THCA thing. Makes about as much sense as people with student driver stickers on their cars. It's not getting you out of a ticket. People hope it is. You're welcome, Mike. You're welcome. Yeah, Ryan, I think it's most often just weed. But you're right, Ryan. It could be, Ryan says THCA is probably garbage cannabis and sprayed with Delta 9 or something. It could be sprayed with anything or not. You have no idea what you're getting when you buy unregulated products. So buyer beware. Yes, they can. Ryan asks, can they spray cannabis with Delta 9 or similar? Yes. Yes. Yes, you could. This is just our personal joke show today. Pretendica. Good grief, you all. Okay, listen, let's some people like cannabis and some people don't. That's right. Yeah, native. Norkel doesn't really quite have the same ring, does it? Well, someone tells us that inevitably once a week. Don't say marijuana. Too late. Let's talk about the news. And speaking of THCA flower, there was an analysis done. Now, granted, there have been a lot of analyses done, and this one, it gives you the same thing. It's gonna tell you the same thing that all the other studies have told you, but we're gonna tell you again. This one talks about hemp-derived intoxicants, and that they are frequently mislabeled. They often contain more THC than is permitted by federal law for hemp, and that they contain elevated levels of pesticides. So, gross. But the researchers who did this analysis said consumers are unwittingly consuming contaminated products. And someone asked earlier what NORML's position is on, I can't even find it, it's really here, what's NORML's stance on the hemp-derived market? What do you mean, what's our stance? Like, should unregulated operators be peddling garbage to consumers? No. Look, I'm not saying everyone's doing that, but I'm saying that outside of a regulated landscape, consumers have no reassurance that what's on the label is what's in the package. And study after study after study, in our opinion, studies by researchers are validating these concerns that consumers deserve protection and honesty, and they deserve to be able to go to a store and buy a product that's been regulated to be safe, to be clean, to not be dishonest in what's in the product, to not be sold to people under 21, to not be packaged in ways that are appealing to children, to not contain pesticides or other contaminants. And that's what that unregulated marketplace is currently subjecting consumers to. If you're going to sell a product that has cannabinoids in it, they all should be regulated the same way. The amount of THC in a product is not the determining factor for the need for regulation. Let's say it's actually hemp with 0.3% THC, not with 20% THCA and 0.3% THC. Let's just say it's actually rope, not dope, and someone wants to make pre-rolls out of that and smoke it. You're still setting something on fire and inhaling it. You still deserve, as a consumer, the same protections you would get if you were purchasing from a state-regulated model, right? Whether or not it has THC doesn't mean that let's say there's no THC, doesn't mean you don't have to be concerned about mold or mildew or mycotoxins or pesticide residue or heavy metals. You still have to be concerned about all of those things. And right now in America, we have this farm bill loophole that people think exists. People are definitely exploiting whether it's real or not. And consumers are the ones who are getting harmed. So, don't. I don't know. I don't love the tomatoes in my backyard, but whatever. Oh, woof. Anne, that's amazing. Anne says, Anne's comment says, I first joined the NORML chapter at the University of Arizona in 1979. Thanks for watching, Anne. Good to see you here. Ryan asks, has anyone heard of THCO? Yes. I saw a vape shop place selling flour that was labeled that. No. First of all, what's in it? Who knows? Does it actually have THCO sprayed on that flour? If so, gross. No one should be consuming THCO or THCP, full stop. Just no. The way those compounds came to exist is slightly terrifying, so please no. And the only way it would be on flour is if it was put on flour. It is not naturally occurring. I mean, look, the hemp stuff, someone says that they suspect that the hemp stuff is likely still safer than the old brickweed from the 90s. I mean, depending on what point in time in the 90s, possibly, but they're also like pretty equivalent when it comes to the potential for contaminants. Oh, Anne says I worry about fentanyl-laced weed that folks who live in states where pot isn't legal. And you can stop worrying about that. There's not been a single validated case of that in the U.S. The only thing that comes close was in Connecticut. Their toxicology report actually determined that it was cross-contamination that happened. It was not intentional putting fentanyl on weed. It was just cross-contamination that they posited occurred during evidence collection. So that's not a thing. Look, if that's a talking point that helps your state legalize it, Florida, I'm looking at you, go ahead, because people clearly believe that. But just because your local law enforcement says that doesn't make it true. In fact, anytime, and this is hello, every reporter out there, the next time you hear, oh, well, it was fentanyl-laced marijuana, ask for the toxicology report. Because without a toxicology report from a forensic toxicologist, those are just words. It doesn't mean anything. There is no way to validate that claim without a toxicology report. What we typically see is someone overdoses, and it is going to be a lesser penalty to say, oh, well, I just smoked weed, than to say, oh, I had fentanyl, or I had illegal opioids. So it's a lot easier to say, oh, I just smoked weed. And then that turns into, oh, it's fentanyl-laced marijuana, without any single validated circumstance of that. Credible validated circumstance of that. So let's just not. Okay. If you live somewhere where you can grow your own plants, you're welcome. Happy that that's working out for you. What's THCO, Ryan? It's a not naturally occurring synthesized compound. There you go. There you go. Good suggestions from Ryan there. Native in Michigan, thank you for your comments about hemp in Michigan. I love seeing that Michigan prohibits hemp growers from using certain pesticides. Native is asking if USDA regulates hemp. Not really. There's some provisions, but it's not the same as having a regulatory structure in your state that ensures consumer safety. Also, Thank you, Native, for sharing that in Michigan, processing for hemp is with your cannabis regulatory agency. That's where it should be. That's absolutely where it should be. It is Skyline. Skyline says people really don't realize that the Delta whatever is just spice or K2 from 10 to 15 years ago. It's exactly what it is. It is. Spice is technically a cannabinoid, meaning it's like a cannabinoid. These are cannabinoids. Like Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 9 can also be synthesized. Delta 9 conversion help. It happens during a synthesis process for Delta 8, THCO, THCP, and just the list of letters. The alphabet soup goes on and on. Those are all synthetics. Carl asks if I could describe the difference between a medicinal cannabis plant and a recreational cannabis plant. There isn't one. You asked a counselor this question when she was yapping at City Hall, not actually knowing what she was speaking about. There's no difference. Your state, states may have different legal definitions of those plants, and they may even inappropriately require different regulatory provisions for a product that is medical versus a product that is adult use. We definitely see that in the United States, where it's more stringent for one than the other. But a cannabis plant is a cannabis plant is a cannabis plant. There's no difference. But like calling it medical or adult use, other than like the context of your state law. For example, in Virginia, there are two definitions. There's marijuana and there's medical cannabis. Medical cannabis is not marijuana. Like, could you drive around with medical cannabis in your backpack in the front seat? Sure. Is that stupid? Absolutely. Because you're leaving it up to law enforcement to interpret the nuance of the law. Is it legal? Yes. Is it a good idea? No. That's just an example of where you can split hairs legally, but like, I get the question you're asking, and is there a difference between the plants? Oh. Hey, Candace. How would I suggest, Candace says, how would I suggest getting into the industry on the corporate side? I don't know. I wouldn't. I think that, like, if you're trying to corporate, there's a lot of sections there. I think you have to be good at whatever that is, absent the cannabis part, unless it's like the policy position. Then you should probably be really good at cannabis policy. But if it's marketing, you should probably be really good at marketing. Look, Candace, I think MJ Biz is a great way to meet people, and there are just tons of cannabis business organizations that you can connect with. I definitely would say at your state level, get connected there. You came from LinkedIn? Hi, thanks for coming from LinkedIn. Thank you, Skyline, for putting up that whole definition. I am not reading it. Just don't consume that. It's gross. And if cannabis is moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, there will be no meaningful impact from a consumer standpoint whatsoever. What could happen is legal cannabis businesses operating under state regulatory models, they could potentially be able to take standard business tax deductions that they can't take right now. But from a consumer standpoint, doesn't do anything from a general industry standpoint. Look, every state cannabis model that's operating right now is operating in conflict with federal law under Schedule 1, and it would continue to do so in conflict with federal law under Schedule 3. Francis, I think that Francis says, do I think recreational weed will be legal in Florida this year? Francis, Florida voters have the opportunity to pass Amendment 3. They have the opportunity to legalize adult use in Florida and end about 60,000 arrests every year. Are they going to? Let's find out together, but yes on 3 is what I would be saying to everyone you know in Florida. Fusion, I would agree. So THCO is it's more like THCP than Delta 8 and Delta 10. They are absolutely, these are all synthesized. None of these are naturally occurring, but THCO and THCP are essentially pro-drugs, and they are not, other than saying THC in them, they're not really in the same category as Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10. There's far less research on those, and the potential for negative outcomes for consumers is much higher. Woodyard, maybe Virginia needs a higher plant count, or maybe Virginians just need to be better at cultivating cannabis for personal use. Look, it was 2, and now it's 4, so you're welcome. Okay, I know what you're saying, Fusion, about spice versus synthesized cannabinoids. Yeah, the spice, those are cannabimimetics, whereas the garbage that's popular today is synthesized cannabinoid. It's not so much about where it originated from, it's about the end product not being clean or honest. It's not about Delta 8, Delta 9, or Delta 10, right? We can put those in their own sort of category. It's not about those cannabinoids themselves, it's about the product, how it's made, and what ends up in the final product. What ends up on the label not being honest, what ends up in the product not being safe for humans. And then when you get into THCO and THCP, that's just a no. Just no, altogether no. Samuel, why does your shirt have holes in it? Like, did you get it new and then it got holes? Did you get it from our store? Tell me more, Samuel. Email me at normal@normal.org. Because if you just got it and it has holes in it, maybe you've had it for 100 years. That's what you mean. And now you need a new one. But if you got it and wore it once and it has holes in the neck, I'm concerned. Tell me more. Oh, Ryan, look at you, Ryan, doing the work for me. Yeah, if even better, yes, I wouldn't put it in the glove box. I would put it in the trunk. In Virginia, specifically, a locking container in the trunk or behind the last row of passenger seating. Check your state's laws. Okay. Yeah, Candace, I think like MJ BizCon is a really great opportunity to meet with so many people in the industry. So if you haven't gone, definitely do that. And then get involved with industry orgs in your state. Woodyard asks why Schedule 3, not 4 or 5 or none. I don't know. That's the recommendation that they made. That's the recommendation HHS made. They felt like they had enough. They felt like there was enough evidence to support a move to Schedule 3. What has to happen, though, is Congress has to pass a bill to remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act. How are we going to end federal prohibition? It's that way. It is Congress passing a bill, putting it on the desk of the president, who will then sign the bill. So elect people to Congress who will pass that bill. We've had that bill many years now, but we need people in Congress that will pass it, and then we need a president who will sign it. Yes, Fusion. In fact, I just read a study. Now, this isn't the first one. We've seen this. We've seen studies before that talk about. So Fusion says, I 100% believe that the one and only reason these Delta-8 THCO spice things exist is because of prohibition, not because people want to prefer them. And we at NORML would agree with Fusion's assessment here, and so would data. So studies repeatedly are concluding that these unregulated synthesized products are far more popular in states without legalization. Thank you, Woodyard. I'm glad you appreciate it. Okay, Samuel, I'm glad that was. I'm sorry that your 15-year-old shirt has 3 holes in it. Yeah, thank you. I hate your name, but Marinol is Schedule 3. There is hey, Ryan. Ryan says, sounds like we need to get a petition going around and get some signatures and send to your state Congress and Congress people encouraging to federal reschedule altogether. Yeah, Ryan, we have that on our website. So go there. NORML.org/act. I think it's the first federal action alert up. Let's see. It is about descheduling and expungements is what I think it is. Yes, tell the White House and Congress to support descheduling and conviction relief. I will drop a quick link to that in the comments. Sorry, Instagram, where you can't see that, but you can find it at norml.org/act. There it is, Ryan. Anne asks, is there a list of candidates that support the legislation? And we have a voter guide at vote.norml.org. It's called Smoke the Vote. And you can see where the candidates stand on the issue. If a candidate hasn't filled out our survey, hasn't submitted comments, we weren't able to find any public statements from them, then there may not be any information. You can let us know if you know differently about that candidate. You can submit it right through Smoke the Vote. Thank you, Fusion.
Stops.
Can you ask hot? Someone call you hot on Instagram says, can I ask who runs NORML? So there are 3 directors at NORML. Myself, Paul is the deputy director, and Morgan is the political director. And then we have our acting executive director is Randy Quast. He is the treasurer of the NORML board of directors. And then there's the NORML board of directors, and the chair of the NORML board of directors is Dan Beats, an attorney in Missouri who also is the chapter coordinator for Missouri NORML. So those are the people who, and then Keith Strop is the founder of NORML, and he works part-time as legal counsel with myself, Morgan, and Paul. So that's the answer. We're the people who run NORML. Native on Instagram is asking if NORML is doing any campaigning or concerned about any certain laws. Yes, most state legislative sessions are over, but we do have an action center for specific legislation. You can find that at normal.org/act. And you can look state by state to see if we have any alerts up for pending legislation. You can see the federal priorities right at the top of the page as well. Thank you for asking that question, Native. And then there are the ballot initiatives and voter referenda, and you can see those in NORML's election central at normal.org/election. I don't even have that. Oh, there it is. There's Election Central. normal.org/election. Hot. Would like to become a NORML member? Please do. Go to normal.org/join right now. You just sent an email. Thank you. All right. I'm so glad I caught up. All right, let's do some. One of the guys from NORML taught at Oaksterdam. That's Paul. Paul was at Oaksterdam. Okay. Thank you, Christopher. You'll always be my field producer. Here is a clinical trial. You know, people love to say, well, we really need more research. We don't need more research. We have a lot of research. And they go, well, but it's not a clinical trial. As if suddenly they're researchers. Yeah, guess what? There's over 120 of those. Here's another one. This clinical trial was looking at cannabis extracts for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. And lo and behold, these researchers determined that cannabis extracts are in fact safe and effective for treating this type of refractory nausea. So they say, in fact, for patients receiving moderate or high emetic risk chemotherapy, that means if you are a patient taking chemo that is likely to make you barf, not all chemos make you barf, some of them do. But if for patients receiving moderate or high emetic risk chemo, THC and CBD may be considered as an option. Exactly. People who say we just don't know. Yeah, no, we know. We do. I am super excited about this next study, not because it says something new, something we don't talk about like every week, but because it was done in Virginia. It was done at Old Dominion University. And it concludes that medical cannabis patients report improved quality of life and reduced prescription drug use. Study authors go on to say, quote, medical cannabis should be considered as an alternative treatment for patients who suffer from anxiety, depression, insomnia, or chronic pain. No kidding. And fortunately, where this study was done here in Virginia, they can access medical cannabis for those things. Researchers affiliated with Old Dominion University in Virginia surveyed 31 patients enrolled in the state's medical cannabis program. Study participants all resided in rural Virginia. And I think that's a really important demographic to look at. This is the full text of the study. Medical cannabis use and quality of life among Appalachian adults. does appear in the Journal for Nurse Practitioners. But I thought that was really super. Okay. Oh, good. I love when Instagram cuts off one of my streams. So helpful. No, mainstream physicians are, someone's asking, I think you're asking that person to comment, but I'm going to comment because it's my show. Can you comment on whether mainstream physicians are beginning to recommend the use of medical cannabis and or qualifying as cannabis certifying physicians? Yes and no. I think that when states eliminate barriers for physicians to certify their patients, meaning when states do not require physicians or practitioners to register, they have far greater participation than when the state requires a practitioner to register, to pay a fee, or to jump through some hoop. People don't want to get on a list and they don't want to pay money. Physicians are already qualified to write prescriptions. They should equally be qualified. Just because they're licensed to practice medicine, they should be qualified to certify a patient for medical cannabis. More and more states are moving in that direction. Virginia is one of them. That's already there. Christopher, all of Virginia is not rural Virginia. And yes, Woodyard ODU is a good school. Hot sugar. I check my email far too often. So, far too often. Welcome back, Native. Yeah, so Anne, we write about this pretty regularly about healthcare providers' attitudes toward cannabis, and are they where the general population is? No, they are not. I'm kind of doing a quick stroll through our news. The last thing we wrote about healthcare providers was a physicians group calling for cannabis decrim. But this is a pretty common topic that comes up with where healthcare providers are. Looking to see if I can get anything to pop up quickly. I can't. Oh, I should just click on that one. That'll probably get me there. Anyhow. We get this a lot. Anne says, plus big pharma discourages medical cannabis. We get this a lot where people are like, oh, well, it's big pharma. It's not, though. It's more like big medicine, meaning the health systems themselves. So, like the hospital group that physicians belong to, that's a health system. They will say, oh, well, you can't issue certifications. We forbid it because you work for us. Can they, though? Can they really? Let me see if I can. Oh, here's one word. That's typically, it's not big pharma. Big pharma doesn't really care. Big pharma has done very little in regard to cannabis. They dumped some cash in opposition to a ballot measure some years ago in, I believe it was either Arizona or Nevada. It was one of those states over there that had it on the ballot. And the liquid version of Marinol, which is called Syndros, was about to come out, and so they dropped some cash and lost. They opposing that. Some pharmaceutical entity dropped some cash to oppose that legalization initiative. Where am I live from? I happen to be in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah, so I did a quick look at healthcare providers in our news section, and health providers say that they are unprepared to discuss cannabis therapy with their cancer patient. Most healthcare providers unfamiliar with topics related to medical cannabis. But then when you get a little more specific, cancer treatment providers are accepting of medical cannabis use in children. Oh, why is it so late? Okay, I gotta pay attention to do life. Yeah, so there's a lot of info about that. Hey, there was another Gallup poll done, and because Gallup is smart, they asked about cannabis. And in what will not be surprising to any of you, Americans say that alcohol and tobacco are more harmful than cannabis. Go America. Two more for you real quick here. And I feel like this is all like, hey, here's a bunch of things that we've talked about before. Let's talk about them again. I love it. Here. An analysis was done regarding the presence of THC in blood. And did that correlate with impairment? The answer, of course, is no. Consistent with prior studies, investigators in this study concluded, quote, the correlation between drug concentration was high for alcohol, but low for THC, meaning that the correlation meaning that someone just ran into my door. More alcohol in the blood was easy to see that there was a higher risk of impairment, but THC in the blood, the percentage of THC in the blood did not match up with any increased risk for impairment. Like alcohol, the same thing didn't happen to THC. And then one last story, one last news for you. No, not North Dakota. Why is that on here? Listen, I'm just going to tell you about it. Charleston, West Virginia. So there was a citizens initiated measure, meaning citizens went out and collected signatures to get a local referendum on the ballot there. And instead, yeah, but North Dakota was last week, Christopher. That's what I mean. This is this week. This week, West Virginia. Charleston, West Virginia. Their city council, instead of putting it on the ballot, just went ahead and adopted the measure. Good job. Good job, city council. So what they did, there's about 47,000 people who live in Charleston, so small, and the city council amended and then approved the citizens initiated municipal measure that significantly reduces local penalties for low-level possession offenses. So it's not really true decrim. You could call it, we call it depenalization. It reduces penalties. But as it was amended and approved, Bill 8039 removes fines and the threat of jail time for first-time low-level possession of 15 grams or less. And then subsequent offenses come with fines between $250 and $500. And then if after someone pays the fine or completes the other terms set in place by the court, they have the possibility of having their convictions dismissed or filing to have it expunged. And this takes effect on the 25th. So good job, Charleston. I did it. I did all the news. Did I do them all? I did them all. Yay. Good job. All right, that was fun. Coming up for you in green light is all over West Virginia. I don't know what that means. Is that a medical store? Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate that. Hey, Hot Sugar asks or says on Instagram, asks, so when a person drives a vehicle while high, they won't get in trouble. That depends on what state you're in. First of all, let me say this. Don't drive high. It's stupid. It's so irresponsible. It's so stupid. Don't drive high. Don't drive impaired for any reason. Whether you're tired, it doesn't matter what the reason is. Don't drive while you're impaired. It's stupid and irresponsible. In some states, they have per se DUID laws for cannabis. And so that means just the presence of some amount of THC in your system is enough to get you a DUI. It's not contingent upon whether or not you are impaired. In some states, they don't have per se DUID laws, which is smart because they're not scientifically supported. But they are a way to criminalize people. And then you have to, in those states that don't have per se DUID laws, then you're going to have to go through a process like what we have in Virginia, where there's a stop, a traffic stop. There's generally going to be a roadside sobriety. And then if they think that there's impairment, they can move on to fluids testing. And for THC, that's going to be a blood draw. Forensic toxicologist is going to look at the lab results and is looking for 2 spikes on that blood analysis to see if the person had consumed cannabis within that window, and then it is reasonable to assume that that may have been contributing to their impairment. This is how we prosecute DUID in Virginia for cannabis. But yeah, as Carl says, impairment is impairment. It doesn't matter why. And in your state, having THC, depending on your state, having THC in your system while not being impaired can still be grounds for DUID. Why are we talking about Trulieve? Did I miss something up higher? I'm not going to scroll back up and ask, but I see your comment, Fusion, that says anytime I hear someone mention Trulieve and cannabis, it's usually negativity and makes me feel defeated. They donated millions to help get it on the ballot. They sure did. They spent a lot of money to get legalization on the ballot in Florida, and it has the potential to end tens of thousands of arrests every year if you pass Amendment 3 in Florida. If somebody else wanted to put forth a ballot measure that did whatever the hell it was they wanted it to do specifically, they could have ponied up $40 million to do it, but they didn't. John Morgan, who I happen to work with in entertainment at Walt Disney World. John Morgan put a lot of his own money into getting the medical cannabis ballot measure on the ballot and passed in Florida. And like it's the people or the businesses who have the resources and who are going to step up and do it. And if you want to be part of the conversation, then show up and participate. And if you don't put in the effort, it's okay to have opinions about it, but you have kind of less of a leg to stand on if you aren't participating in the process, right? So everyone stop whining about Trulieve. I feel the same way. Just like, ugh. Fusion says you heard someone in the 90s say that John Morgan was a great person in person, that they met him and couldn't say enough kind words. Yeah, I mean, I just know him as like a co-worker, a fellow cast member from Disney. I liked working with him. Then I thought it was hilarious later, like years later, to see that we were both like working in cannabis. So weird. Who knew you would go from that to that? Anyhow, and thank you for joining us. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope I got to answer your questions. If I didn't, or you're watching this afterward, try to join us next week, or just drop us an email at normal@norml.org. Yes, it's a real email address. Yes, I really see it with my own eyes. Christopher asks this one last question. Christopher says, I got one last question. There are a lot of types of cannabis once you look beyond the surface, all with different tastes and smells. What is my favorite cultivar of marijuana? So my favorite chemovar, as we say, is legal cannabis. Legal cannabis. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hey, our friends at Suncoast NORML, our Florida chapter, they have a show on Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern. It streams live on YouTube. You can find that by looking up Suncoast NORML. See if that works. There you go. And if you are in Pennsylvania, or you'd like to go to Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley NORML has their annual picnic on September 7th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. That event is posted on Facebook. And one more event to tell you about. This takes a little bit of planning, but the 2024 NORML Key West Legal Seminar is December 5th through 7th at the Pier House Resort and Spa in Key West. Come hang out with me, Paul, Keith. Meet legal experts from around the country, all focused on cannabis policy. If you are an attorney who needs continuing legal education credits, our legal seminars are fully accredited in every state that requires CLEs for their practicing attorneys. If you do not need CLEs or you're not an attorney, we have a discounted rate for you. So it's like win-win, right? Check it all out at norml.org/Key West. We do have a discounted block of rooms for seminar attendees. That information is on the website as well. It sells out very quickly. So, hey, get some friends together and get a room and register for the NORML Key West Legal Seminar and come hang out with us there in December. Thank you for letting me know about the Violent Femmes in Asheville on September 7th. Good enough, Samuel. I hope you'll be there wearing, I hope you'll be there wearing your normal t-shirt. All right, everyone. This has been a blast. Whatever. I try to do this every Friday. I love answering your questions. So come back here next week with more, and we'll do this all again. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.